Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Baugh, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. On the program today, we're going to run an actual scientific experiment with state-of-the-art equipment to try to solve a mystery. The mystery has to do with the Inca burial stones. For a number of years, reports of these stones have been coming out of the Peruvian desert, which show individuals having been buried centuries ago, but all within the last 2,000 years. And many of those stones, those Inca burial stones, have dinosaurs etched on them. Some of them even have men riding dinosaurs, others men feeding dinosaurs. Were those people capable of taming, domesticating those incredible creatures? And more importantly, did those people see living dinosaurs? If they did, that destroys a major tenet of evolutionary theory, because according to evolution, the last dinosaur saw his demise 64 million years ago, and the first man arrived on planet Earth in an evolutionary form a little over 2.5 million years ago. But if we have scientific, defendable, experimentable evidence, and in order to be scientific, we must be able to experiment with it. If we have that evidence, the theory of evolution is in serious jeopardy. If man saw living dinosaurs in the recent past, evolution is destroyed. My guest today is a dear and personal friend, an intrepid individual, meaning he's not afraid of anything, including the devil himself. Dr. Dennis Swift, what a delight to have you with us on the program.
It's always a delight. I'm not afraid of the devil. The devil's not my boss. The Lord is.
The Lord is,
yes.
And the devil is a defeated enemy.
That's right.
The blood of Jesus Christ conquers all.
That's right.
You have attempted, well, in the last program, not only attempted, you have actually destroyed the thesis of Eric von Däniken, who has over 500 million adherents to his religion that aliens visited planet Earth. Now today, you're going to attempt to debunk a major thesis of evolution. That is that no living man ever saw a dinosaur and no dinosaur ever saw a living man. Well, we have news for the academic community. And you published a book recently. I read it on the plane coming back. I normally try to nap on the plane. I couldn't nap. You wouldn't let me go to sleep. This is too intriguing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Tell us about the Inca burial stones. Where do we find them?
Well, the Inca burial stones are found throughout Peru. They are associated with various cultures. The Wari, the Ica, which were pre-Columbian Indians before the Incas, the Paracas people, the Tiwanaku, the Noscan, and some other associated Indian groups. This dates from about 500 BC to about 1200 AD. There have been official excavations of these stones. Acerto Pazeta, who was the curator of the Ica Regional Museum in 1966 in Ocahaje, in the desert of southern Peru, in an official Peruvian excavation.
Yes.
He found 3 stones and wrote a book about it. One of them was of the 5-toed llama that was supposed to be extinct 40 million years ago. Another was of a Mesozoic fish that was supposed to be extinct 130 million years ago. Other archaeologists have found these stones. And first of all, let's just kind of talk about some of the aspects of the ancient technology that would bring about that they could have made these stones.
Yes.
When we go high up into the Andes at Cusco, many people are familiar with Machu Picchu and the splendid Inca city there and Sacsayhuaman. Well, they were able to do incredible feats with stone. Some of these stones weigh 300 million tons.
A single stone?
A single stone. The largest stone, as we mentioned, weighs 20,000 tons. I said that's right. 20,000 tons.
Now, you said 300 million pounds.
Well, 300 tons.
Ton.
But 20,000 tons also is the largest stone. But a 200-ton stone weighs the equivalent of 500 family-sized automobiles. Not only were they able to move these stones, they were able to carve them and put them into place where you couldn't put a razor blade in between there today, even though there's been earthquakes and everything else. I would like to get the guys who do the sheetrock in my house to do that. They can't get it flush, but they were able to do that. Also, we see stones that were 43 different sizes. How did they do that? They had a technology of working with stone that we have not been able to duplicate.
Agree.
We cannot move these stones. Not only that, somehow they figured out when they moved the stone, 400 tons, 200 tons, how much indention it would make in the earth before they let it down. And they moved these as far as 200 plus miles away at Tiahuanaco.
It's an incredible feat.
But in the southern deserts of Peru, in those tombs, because it's so dry, once they seal the tomb, this remains remarkably preserved. For instance, here's a mummy, a Paracas mummy, 500 BC. I've looked down in these tombs and had hairy-headed corpses with dried-up eyeballs stare back at me. And so what we have here is this kind of thing. And in some of them, they have found dinosaur vases among the mochi, and they depict them fighting dinosaur-like creatures.
Marvelous.
So this is quite an astonishing thing.
Yes, it is.
Then, of course, they were well noted for their surgeries. We know that they did brain surgeries, heart surgeries, cesarean sections, amputations, and many other features and medical procedures that were just now successfully. At least 62 to 80% of their patients survived. And the bias of the European doctors was so great that they tried to discount this. So we know they had great abilities in the area of medicine. They were not beetle-browed, barrel-chested, bow-legged, bumbling brutes, stoop-shouldered, hairy-backed, club-carrying, knuckle-dragging, drooling savages. They were advanced people. In the prestigious science journal, British journal Nature, they found among the Chamu people of northern Peru, around 450 to 750 AD, they had dilators, other instruments for performing abortions. We know they also used a very complex form of acupuncture and that they performed open heart surgery. Celtic surgical tools were found. This is another example of ancient technology, 2,000 years old, and it showed that proof that they operated on cataracts and tonsil surgeries. Then we have mochi vases. I have been in a museum where there's over 55,000 of these vases, and a sizable percentage of them are medical vases. Here we have the doctor doing a cesarean section. We also have examples of suturing, amputations, prosthetic devices. They found amongst
advanced technology
surgery
is the point of emphasis.
And this relates to the Inca stones. They're not carved by modern rotary tools, by hacksaws, or any other modern instruments. The genuine ones are not. Because we know that these ancient people had a technology to carve on stone. We already witnessed that with what they could do with stone blocks of megatons.
Yes.
They have found mummies with sutures still there. They could tell that they had sutured them. They found a skull of an Inca person with 6 small metal wires that they had used very, very small metal to do the surgery.
Advanced technology.
They drilled holes smaller than the thinnest needle of quartz and agate. In fact, I have some examples over here. We have to use a double-sided, diamond-tipped, tungsten steel, water-cooled drill at high speed to drill through what they drilled through. And breathtaking, minuscule. All of the ancient people, Mesopotamians, other people, they were able to do very intricate work that would take us to a microscope today to do. So we're not dealing with a group of backwards people in the Stone Age.
So this helps to solve the mystery, the capability, the technological capability of these marvelous people in order to solve the mystery of the burial stone with the dinosaurs and men shown together.
And we have examples of some of their surgical tools. These are from pre-Columbian medical doctors. These are from their physician kits in the tombs. National Geographic in volume number 5, 1980, noted that this was no crude technology, that under 10,000 power magnification, that their obsidian blades were sharp and keen, while modern stainless steel scalpels were pitted and irregular.
We need to say that again. Would you repeat that again for the sake of this audience?
National Geographic noted this, that the obsidian scalpels, and I have one that's minuscule, it's so small for surgeries in this surgeon's kit, that what they did is, under 10,000 power magnification, their obsidian scalpels are sharp and keen, whereas modern stainless steel scalpels are pitted and irregular. In fact, Dr. Donald Crabtree, an anthropologist, he had open heart surgery. He used the ancient obsidian knives for the doctor because it cut quicker and sharper, and it did not bruise the cells as much, and it healed faster.
Marvelous.
So we have several examples. In fact, they made their tweezers like similar to small clamshells, and I have ones right here in bronze. It works better than our tweezers. This thing that's maybe 2,000 years old, if you do like that, it works better. And I've used this before. This ancient piece of medical technology surpasses ours. Of course, in some ways, they were behind us. But there's no doubt that we're dealing with an advanced civilization.
So the technology was here. Now,
yes.
Describe to us,
for instance,
what is
we
found?
have on the Inca stones, many people have disqualified them because they said, look at that, pre-Columbian men with telescopes. Ha, ha, ha. Galileo invented the telescope. Well, I'm sorry if there's any Italians watching, but Galileo did not invent the telescope. Emperor Chan, the Chinese emperor in 2283 BC, he put together lenses and studied the planets. We know that, for instance, here's a piece of pottery, Greek pottery, 86 BC, and we have a Greek looking through a telescope.
Yes.
The Mayans, in their codices, they mention the smoking mirror. They were aware of over 400 references to the constellations, and they knew about Uranus and Neptune, and Neptune was not discovered until the late 1800s, 1850s, astronomically, and they have found tubes and convex mirrors. In fact,
here they are.
Here we are.
Represented on these stones.
We know that the Romans, the Assyrians, the layered lenses, some of these lenses had to have been done by lathes because there's a process called the terradial process for making lenses. It wasn't until after the turn of the 19th century, somewhere less than about 100 years ago, where we developed the same process. The ancient people were studying the heavens, and the Inca stones do have some men with telescopes.
In fact, from Abraham's day on, we have references to the heavens being studied.
The thing that makes most paleontologists pale and gives them a passport to paranoia is the fact that hundreds of the Inca stones have dinosaurs on them. Some dinosaurs interacting with men. This is an example of a Nazcan burial stone. This Nazcan burial stone was found in 2001. Some famous archaeologists were involved. We know that this stone dates somewhere between 400 to 700 AD. It has 2 dinosaurs on it. And if you look closely, you'll see a high concentration of saltpeter.
Yes.
This is a rarity in the desert. Most all objects have no saltpeter from Atacama. This shows that it has to be hundreds of years old. If you look closely, there's an even patina over the stone.
Yes.
There's a wearing away of dermal spines. Dermal spines, as you well know, were not discovered to have been on dinosaurs until 1992.
That's correct.
Here's a stone anatomically correct. We also found on this stone lichen colonies that are supposed to take hundreds of years to grow. And there's a concentration here of blood where the mummy, when that was put in the tomb, the mummy's cranium rested on that stone for centuries. And there was a little bit of scalp and tissue that was diagnosed by Paragon Genetics Laboratory here in Dallas, Texas. They could not get a DNA sequence, but they did diagnose it and scientifically as human. And Dr. John Moreno, one of the greatest Andean scholars, says, yes, this is a colloquial term. It's called a burn. It is ancient blood on this stone. Irrefutable evidence.
Marvelous.
And then we have done many microscopic analysis. One is Palm Laboratories, abrasive company in Portland, Oregon. I hope this is fascinating to our audience.
It is more than fascinating.
Okay. There are critics who have said, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, some of the other stones that is documented in 1571, 1535, yeah, they're ancient engraved stones, but the dinosaur ones are not. Put up a dinosaur stone. I've always put up the dinosaur stones for any independent investigation, the stones that I have. Also, some of the stones were taken to Palm Laboratory in Portland. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars of high-powered microscopes and an RO1 video probe. Quickly, what it does, they also measure within 1/50 millionth of an inch for aircraft parts. We put a bogus stone that was freshly carved, a Cabrera stone, and the Noskin stone. And what they found was, if you will look, irrefutable evidence. This is the dinosaur stones. And here's what it is. We have patina in the grooves.
Yes.
You'll see here that we have lichen colonies growing.
Critically important.
You have pitting and fissuring, and under high magnification, you also have where you see the incrustations and the patina growing into the grooves.
Now, we're going to run a scientific experiment at this time. Dr. Swift brought with him, if you'll step to the controls, we'll be looking over your shoulder, and he brought with him one of these extremely expensive programs. This is a burial stone. Is this from the Nazca area?
This burial stone is from the Nazca area. And what we have here, this technology is so high-tech, it was featured on CSI Miami, one of their investigations. This ProScope digital microscope is used in forensic laboratories. It's small, like a hairdryer, very small, minuscule hairdryer, but it magnifies up to 500x. Now, I have up to 200x here, 200 times. And what it does is, they do it in crime investigations. You can take it, and we can see right now, if you'll look closely.
Now, first, before we look into it, Dennis, I want the audience to know that we have a drawing of a dinosaur, Spinosaurid dinosaur, with the rosette patterns on his side, on the skin, which was not known until 1992 to modern science. That's one of the areas where these stones were criticized because of these rosette patterns. But in 1992 in Scandinavia, they found dermal frills and rosette patterns on the sides of dinosaur skin. So now, if this stone is genuine, Dennis, that means that this dinosaur likeness represents a first-hand eyewitness account or memory in modern times of a living, fleshed-out dinosaur. Can you take us inside the grooves?
What we have is, at magnification, this is 50x power. And when you look at it, you can look on the screen right now, the magnification right here, you see the bumps and everything else. You do not see, when you carve something fresh on an andesite stone, when you carve into the groove, you break the patina.
Yes.
And underneath, there is feldspar and mica. Under a microscope, it's like it'll gleam back at you like a diamond.
Yes.
There is no evidence on these stones.
The patina is in the grooves.
You have
completely.
patina in the grooves. We have a triceratops and some kind of Spinosaurus dinosaur on the stone. And also what we discovered, there's no evidence of rotary-powered tools used on these stones. Some of the critics say, oh, they did it with Dremels or dental drills. No, because when you do that, it gives a whir, and it leaves contours, and it breaks the stone.
It breaks the stone
and you can tell
the surface.
They were also done, there's a few fake stones that have been done for tourists, and I hope that they can see this. And also you can run it over the whole stone. We've done that. We went to the Cabrera Museum in Ica, Peru. We had a skeptic. We had skeptics. We had a Russian Andean scholar who has a PhD. We had computer technicians. We had independent people. We did an on-site investigation. We took 40 stones right on site at the Cabrera Museum with a USB digital microscope, and the skeptics would choose stones that they were sure were false.
Yes.
They would choose the dinosaur stones mostly. Independent people chose stones. The neutral people, believers, chose stones. After all day of an investigation and a test that all felt was fair, I mean, I'll tell you, there was a deafening silence that descended upon the critics because they could see there wasn't hacksaws used, there was patina in the grooves, every indication of a degree of antiquity. And so this further authenticates the Ica stones.
I believe it. In fact, we have some in possession at the Creation Evidence Museum. Now, the critics have said that Dr. Javier Cabrera et al. Used shoe polish to blacken these areas. Would you answer that criticism?
I appreciate you saying that, because Neil Steedy, who's a freelance archaeologist without a degree, he's tried to debunk the Ica stones. He brought back one to the United States, and they took samples of this. It's not shoe polish, it's tar from the ancient tar pits in south of Okahonk. I have instruments right here that have the same tar on it. If I may step over, I'll show you. These surgical instruments have the same black material, the tar.
Beautiful. I want the camera to see this.
See, it's the
this
same,
is incredibly
same
beautiful. Yes.
So Neil Steedy took pieces out of this. There were wood fragments and other stuff in the tar. He had it carbon-14 dated. It dated to 2,000 years ago.
All right. Just as we would suspect.
Well, here's what a fake stone. There have been a few carved by Basilio. He was a friend of mine. But here's what happened. Most of the time, these people are uneducated, campesinos, living out, grubbing in existence out in the desert. They do not know the context. So when he'd do a stone, he might put a Coke machine next to a dinosaur or a plane flying overhead. He would use a hacksaw blade. And it takes many hours to do it with a hacksaw blade. What happened was, you can't see it with your eye, but inside, under a microscope, we've done the test. You can do it on this stone. If you do a hacksaw, there's little pieces of minute metal that will flake off. It's in there and you'll see it. Another thing, if you draw on the stone, because you just don't do it freehand with a hacksaw. They use pencils or ink pens. When you draw a dinosaur and you start carving it, or you use sandpaper on the outside to sand it down, you're going to leave little fragments. These always pass the test. There's none of that on there. And you don't see any residue, because no matter how good you are with a hacksaw, you're going to slip, and there's a little bit of pencil residue or ink pen. None of that was found on the stones that are real.
In fact, you described all of that in your excellent book. And you've defended this marvelously.
And further, no critic can debunk this. This has been found. It has been authenticated by the National Museum of Lima. It is a very prized possession. This is 400 to 700 AD. It was wrapped around a mummy, and that was discovered. And there are 6 dinosaurs on both sides. And I offered $500,000 to any organization based on the RL1 video probe, any evidence to try to debunk this. They all lapsed into a profound and prolonged silence, and they wrote editorial retractions, or they said they're just mythological monsters, they're not dinosaurs.
You have done an incredible job in verifying that man and dinosaur lived contemporaneously, and verifying that these rather ancient peoples had the technology to produce these stones and the technology, if necessary, to even interact with these dinosaurs. Now, the bottom line for all of this, the extreme importance of this is that evolutionary theory has again come into very serious doubt, because one of the basic tenets of evolutionary theory is that the last dinosaur died out some 64 million years ago, and the first man didn't appear even in dawn primitive form until about 2.5 million years ago. But here we have an additional cache of evidence. Hundreds and hundreds of these stones have surfaced because of archaeological excavations in the Peruvian area. This cache has demonstrated that these individuals had to see living dinosaurs in living mode in order to so faithfully represent them. Not bones that they may have found, because they represent their skin, dermal frills and everything in a living mode. What this means is evolutionary theory has again been found wanting, and that drives us back to the absolute authority of the Bible. In the book of Job, chapter 40, God said to Job in verse 15, "Behold, now Behemoth, which I made with thee." That's the great dominant ox-like creature. Then he describes him as having a tail like an entire cedar tree and being the chief of the ways of God. That's a dinosaur. God said, "I made man and dinosaur." God is always right, and he's right about the need that you have. Wouldn't you right now respond to him as the Spirit of God moves upon your heart? Pray this simple prayer. Dear God, I'm a sinner, and I want Jesus Christ in my heart. Lord Jesus, right now I open my heart's door. Come in, live within me. I'll serve you with all my heart.
Creation in the 21st Century has been sponsored by Trinity Broadcasting Network, and only with your love gift of support can this program stay on the air. So write to Creation in the 21st Century, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.